What would you do if your own family left you in the middle of nowhere and called it character building? My name is Hazel Reynolds. I was 28 the last time I saw my family, or rather the last time they saw that version of me. Because what they did that day didn't just end a vacation, it ended the life they had scripted for me. It happened in the kind of dusty, blink-and-you'll-miss-it Wyoming town that doesn't even show up on most maps. One moment, I was walking out of a gas station with a bag of snacks and a half-charged phone. The next, my family was gone. The SUV we'd all crammed into hours earlier had vanished from the parking lot like smoke. I thought maybe they'd moved the car. I looked around the side of the building toward the air pump, the alley, the exit road. Nothing. I tried to call my dad voicemail. Mom straight to voicemail. My brother's Brett finally picked up laughing before I could even get a word out. "We're about 20 minutes down the road," he said, like he was telling me the weather. Then came the kicker. "Let's see if she can make it back on her own," followed by laughter. Cold, heartless laughter. Then they hung up. A group text pinged through. A photo of them grinning in the car. The caption, "Survival of the fittest sis. Find your way home. Let that sink in." They blocked my number right after. I sat on the curb for hours that day, Wyoming sun blistering my skin, the asphalt radiating heat like an oven. I had $43 in cash, a debit card with barely $200, a dying phone battery, and a heart so full of disbelief it felt like a balloon stretched too thin. They'd really done it. They'd left me. But the truth is, the abandonment didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the final punchline in a lifetime of cruelty disguised as humor. Growing up in the Reynolds house was like being trapped in a never-ending roast session. My parents Barbara and Richard believed in toughening up their kids through humiliation. My brothers Brett and Craig mastered the art of torment by the time they were teenagers. And I was the family's favorite target, my 10th birthday. They pretended no one was coming. I cried for hours before they jumped out, yelling surprise middle school graduation. They showed up late on purpose. Prom. They gave my date the wrong address and then laughed about it at dinner. "Can't you take a joke, Hazel? We're just trying to help you grow thicker skin. Life's going to be way worse than anything we throw at you." And maybe they believed that. Maybe they convinced themselves that pain builds character. But what it really built was a girl who constantly questioned her own worth. I just graduated from college 3 weeks before that trip. Graphic design degree, fresh portfolio dreams of working at an agency in Chicago. But my parents had different plans. "You can do your little art projects for the family business," Mom said during my graduation dinner, waving her wine glass dismissively. They owned Reynolds Insurance Group, an old-school firm clinging to relevance in a modern world. Brett, 32, was set to take over. Craig, 30, managed marketing. They wanted me to be their in-house designer. Underpaid, uncredited, and constantly controlled. Financially, I was stuck. Student loans loomed. I worked part-time at a cafe, but it barely covered groceries. My parents paid for my apartment and never let me forget it. Appreciation, they called it. I called it leverage. So when they invited me on a family trip to Colorado, I told myself, just 1 week, get through it and you can finally start carving out your own life. I had no idea that week would change everything. The trip started like every Reynolds vacation, snide jokes, pranks, and passive-aggressive digs. Remember when she forgot her swimsuit in Florida? Craig smirked as I loaded my suitcase into the SUV. I'd been 16 then. They'd refused to stop and buy me a new one. I sat fully dressed on the beach while they laughed and snapped photos. This trip was no different. Day 1. Brett hid my phone, let me panic, then found it in his pocket. Craig stole my lunch while I napped in the back seat. Dad took a pointless detour just so he could blame my navigation skills. At a hotel in Nebraska that night, I overheard my parents through the wall. "She's too sensitive," Mom said. "She needs to toughen up." "Maybe this trip will finally teach her," Dad replied. I clutched my pillow, heart aching. I told myself, just 5 more days, then you're free. But the next day, that was the last time I ever traveled with them. We crossed into Wyoming around noon. Dad pulled into a quiet gas station on the outskirts of a town called Pine Ridge. It looked like something from a movie set, flat land, one-story buildings, a battered snack shack across the road. I went inside for snacks. Brett wanted a Coke. Craig asked for jerky. I picked up a water and some chips for myself. The cashier, Miranda, her name tag read, smiled at me. "You folks just passing through Colorado trip," I replied, not knowing those words would be the last normal ones I'd speak for months. When I stepped outside, the SUV was gone, and they never came back. I didn't cry when I realized they weren't coming back. I sat on the curb in the fading light, trying to convince myself it was just a twisted test, some exaggerated lesson my parents were pushing to the edge. They'd pull back like always, show up just before things got too real. But the hours passed. My phone dropped to 4%, and all I got was another photo, this time of the family enjoying dinner somewhere scenic, probably already in Colorado. Wonder if Hazel found dinner yet, captioned with rolling on the floor, laughing emojis. That's when it hit me they weren't waiting for me to figure it out. They were counting on me to fail. They wanted to watch me fall apart from afar. And not one of them, not my mother, not even my brothers, bothered to check if I had enough money or a place to go. That's the part I keep circling back to. Not just the cruelty, the ease of it. How naturally it came to them to leave me behind. I'd been sitting outside the gas station for 3 hours when the cashier, Miranda, finished her shift and stepped outside. She squinted into the sunset, then looked at me. "Honey, are you okay?" That simple question broke me. I told her everything. Between hiccuped sobs and a raw throat, I explained how my family thought abandonment was a punchline, how I had nowhere to go, no one to call. How I hadn't even had the guts to make close friends because my family always made it seem like they were all I needed. Miranda didn't say much. She didn't have to. What she did do was this. She pulled out her phone and called a woman named Eleanor. "She's kind," Miranda said. "Bit tough, but she's got a good heart. Rents out a room sometimes, and she hates bullies." Eleanor's house was a yellow bungalow with peeling shutters and a wraparound porch that creaked when you stepped on it. She opened the door wearing an oversized flannel shirt and wire-rimmed glasses. "You must be Hazel," she said without smiling. "Come in before the mosquitoes eat you alive." That night, I slept in her guest room, a twin bed with an old quilt and a window that overlooked the backyard. I wore one of Eleanor's nightgowns, washed my face with her off-brand cleanser, cried into her pillow until the weight of exhaustion pulled me under. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of a frying pan sizzling. Eleanor slid a plate of eggs and toast in front of me like it was no big deal. "You'll need a job," she said between bites. "2, actually, if you want to stay. The room's $300 a month. You can work some of it off helping at my bookstore." Bookstore. The word caught me off guard. You own a bookstore 30 years. It's called Pages and Poems. Right on Main Street. We've got more mice than customers these days, but it's home. She didn't pity me. That was the first thing I noticed. She expected me to do something. And oddly, that made me feel safer than I'd felt in years. That same day, I walked downtown and applied at every place that had a help wanted sign in the window. The Pinewood Diner hired me on the spot, breakfast and lunch shift, 6 days a week, $12 an hour plus tips. Not much, but it was mine. The first week blurred by in a haze of aching feet and quiet panic. I served pancakes to locals in cowboy boots and retirees who read newspapers with their coffee. Then I'd rush to the bookstore where Eleanor taught me how to restock shelves, track orders, and smile even when your back hurt like hell. I checked my phone every night, hoping for something. A change of heart, an apology, anything. What I got instead were texts like, "Still waiting for that call saying you made it home. Don't be dramatic. Day 5 of Hazel's adventure. Any bears yet?" The last message came from my mom. "Tough love looks cruel at first, but one day you'll thank us." I blocked them all. One day after my shift, I found myself crying in the back of the diner. I tried to hide it, but Amber, one of the waitresses, caught me. She was 25, a single mom with tired eyes and sharp instincts. "Family," she asked, passing me a napkin. I nodded. She didn't press. I just told her all of it. The years of being the punchline, the abandonment, the texts, the silence. Amber listened without interrupting. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "That's not family, Hazel, that's emotional abuse." I blinked. I'd never heard anyone say it like that. I'd always believed I was the problem, too sensitive, too serious, not funny enough. Amber shook her head. "You're out now. Don't go crawling back." That night, I made a decision. I would not beg to be taken back. I would not grovel for love from people who had weaponized it against me. I would stay. The next morning, I emailed my college professors asking for references. I applied for ID replacements. I created a new email address, one my family didn't know, and uploaded my portfolio. Eleanor, watching me draft new flyers for an author event, said, "You've got talent, girl. That design's better than anything my nephew ever made for us." She paused. "You should meet Mason. He's a web developer, useless with color but brilliant with code." Mason was a flannel-wearing, mountain bike-riding 30-something who worked remote and drank his coffee black. He took one look at my designs and said, "You ever want to freelance, let me know. I've got clients who need your skills." That night, as I walked back to Eleanor's house under a pale Wyoming moon, something inside me shifted. I wasn't trying to survive anymore. I was starting to live. I never planned to stay in Pine Ridge, but sometimes the best decisions are the ones you make in survival mode before you even realize you're saving your own life. A week after I started working at the diner and Eleanor's bookstore, I picked up my first freelance gig. Mason had introduced me to a local business owner, a woman who ran a quilting shop in the next town over. She needed a logo, some flyers, and someone to untangle the ancient mess that was her online store. The pay was modest, just $200, but when I received that first Venmo notification, I cried in the walk-in freezer at the diner. Not because of the money, because it was mine. No strings, no guilt, no family dangling it over my head like bait. I was starting to remember who I was before they told me who I was supposed to be. Every day in Pine Ridge became part of the rebuild. Amber introduced me to her friends, other young people who'd stayed in town or, like me, landed here trying to get unstuck. We met for late-night coffee, impromptu cookouts behind the diner, game nights in someone's too small living room. No one asked where I came from unless I wanted to tell them. They liked me for me, not the version my family had tried to mold through mockery and manipulation. Eleanor gave me room, literally and figuratively, to find my pace. Her spare room had become a sanctuary, and she never hovered. But every so often she'd offer advice like a sword in a silk glove. "You can keep looking over your shoulder, Hazel. Or you can look forward. One's a lot more useful." So I leaned in. I designed new flyers for the bookstore, launched a small event series with author readings and poetry. Nights revamped the social media account and slowly began building a portfolio I was actually proud of. Mason and I worked late into evenings at the bookstore or at his cabin outside town, him teaching me basic HTML and CSS while I fine-tuned his clients' visuals. "You've got a real eye," he told me one night, scrolling through one of my website mock-ups. "Ever thought about starting a business?" I scoffed. "I'm barely holding 2 jobs and living in someone else's guest room." Exactly. If you're building all this while exhausted, imagine what you could do with a plan. That stuck with me. My family, meanwhile, had gone silent. No texts, no voicemails, no emails from shady alt accounts. Part of me kept checking, though, like a reflex, like phantom pain from a wound I couldn't see but still felt every day. It wasn't until Eleanor caught me scrolling through old messages that she finally said it, "You don't owe them closure. You don't even owe them attention." I nodded, but it took weeks before I really believed her. What finally made it real was when I got a message from my old Chicago landlord. They were cleaning out my apartment. 2 months' rent unpaid. They needed to know what to do with my stuff. I wrote back, "Donate what's useful. Dispose of the rest." It felt like setting fire to the bridge and the map that led there. It was freedom. By month 3, I had 2 steady freelance clients and a small portfolio site built with Mason's help. I also had enough saved to move out of Eleanor's guest room and into a tiny studio apartment above the hardware store. It was 400 square feet of freedom-chipped paint, slanted floors, and a tiny kitchen that barely fit a toaster. But it was mine. I bought a succulent, my first plant, and placed it on the windowsill. "This is the start of your new life," I whispered, touching one of its rubbery leaves. And then the phone call came. I was sipping coffee on my new couch when a Chicago number flashed across the screen. I nearly dropped the mug. I answered. "My mistake. Hazel, it's Brett. Don't hang up." I froze. His voice sounded older, more serious. "We've been trying to find you for months," he continued. "The joke's over. Come home." Joke. That word, it splintered something inside me. "You abandoned me. In another state. With no money, no way home. You cut off my apartment. My support. That's not a joke. That's cruelty." "We figured you'd make it back in a few days," Brett said defensively. "You didn't call. We assumed you were being stubborn." "No." I snapped. I was surviving. "What are you even doing out there?" he asked, tone dripping with disbelief. "Where are you living? How are you making money? I'm running my own business." I said, my voice steady. "I've got clients, a place of my own friends. I'm doing better without any of you." There was a long pause. Then he said, "Mom and Dad want to talk. I don't want to talk to them or you." And I hung up. I blocked the number. Then I cried, but not from sadness, from power. Because this time I wasn't begging. I wasn't defending. I was done. They tried again, of course. New numbers, emails, a letter mailed to the diner after someone told them where I worked. I ignored every attempt. By month 6, my design work paid enough that I could leave the diner and focus full-time on building what Mason and I now called a creative partnership. He handled code. I handled visuals. Together, we became the go-to duo for small businesses within 100 miles. "You need a name," Mason said one night. We were sketching ideas on the back of a placemat at the diner, just like the early days. Something that feels like you. I looked out the window at the sunset, washing over Pine Ridge's rooftops. "New horizon," I said, because that's what this place gave me. By the time I hit my 1-year mark in Pine Ridge, I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. New Horizon Design Studio had officially launched. We didn't have fancy glass walls or a reception desk, but we had something better. A waiting list of small businesses desperate for help navigating the digital world. I was working from a cozy nook in Eleanor's bookstore most afternoons, with Mason joining me when he wasn't at his cabin or out biking. We'd sip black coffee, brainstorm client branding, and swap ideas over playlists that drifted between indie rock and old jazz. Eleanor watched it all unfold with quiet pride. She never said much, but sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with that knowing glint in her eye, like she saw the version of me I was finally becoming, long before I had. "You're not just good at this," she said one evening while shelving books. "You shine when you do it." No one had ever said that to me before, not without strings attached. Somewhere between logo drafts and wireframes, I found room for joy again. Amber's son Tyler started calling me Auntie Hazel. Sam, a community college history professor with a gentle voice and curious eyes, wandered into the bookstore one afternoon, looking for books on local legends. He left with a reading list and came back the next day with coffee. We started walking together after my shifts, then dinners, then weekend hikes into the surrounding hills. By the time we reached our 2nd anniversary, we were living together in a quaint fixer-upper house on the edge of town, a place with creaky floors, a wild backyard, and a sunroom I turned into my home studio. Life was not glamorous. It was real. And it was mine. It wasn't until the magazine article dropped that the outside world finally noticed. Business West, a regional publication, reached out after one of our clients mentioned me during an interview. The editor, Jennifer, called one afternoon asking for a profile on unexpected female entrepreneurs who built success far from the coasts. "Your name came up more than once," she said. 3 months later, a 4-page spread hit newsstands, glossy photos of our office shots of Mason and me, collaborating a headline that read, "Designing Her Own Way, Hazel Reynolds, and the Rise of New Horizons Studio." The article didn't share the full story. I wasn't ready to hand that over to the public. but it included the broad strokes a young woman who arrived in Wyoming with nothing and built a thriving design agency from scratch. Eleanor cried when she saw it. Sam framed it and hung it in the entryway of our house. Tyler told his entire second-grade class that his Auntie Hazel was in a real magazine. Then came the messages, emails, phone calls, voicemails, first from my mother, then my father, then Brett and Craig. Subject lines like, "Please respond. We're proud of you. Let's talk." I deleted them all. I'd left them behind years ago, and not once had they tried to genuinely apologize. Not once had they acknowledged what they did. The only time I paused was when my office manager, yes, I had one now, buzzed me from the front desk. "There's a Barbara Reynolds here to see you." I froze. Then I said, "Send her in." She looked older, thinner, but just as polished. Her slacks were tailored, her lipstick perfect, her expression carefully neutral. "You look well," she said. "I am well," I replied. "Why are you here?" She glanced around the office, eyes scanning the awards on the wall, the framed magazine article, the giant team whiteboard covered in project timelines. "This is impressive," she said softly. The article didn't do it justice. I stayed silent. Barbara sighed. "We've been trying to find you for years. Brett saw you in Denver. After that, your father hired a private investigator. You didn't need a PI," I replied. "I wasn't hiding. I was living." She winced, then sat across from me without being invited. "We made a terrible mistake, Hazel. What started as a stupid joke went too far, and then we didn't know how to come back from it." I let the words hang between us. "It wasn't just the abandonment," I said. "It was the years before, the constant cruelty, the way I was always the target." Tears formed in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them. "I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't see it then. But I see it now." I studied her. This woman who had once mocked me for crying over forgotten birthdays and rigged surprises, she didn't look like a villain. She looked like someone haunted by their past. "I don't want reconciliation," I said quietly. "I don't want to pretend we're something we're not." "I understand," she whispered. "I just wanted to see you, to tell you that you were always the strongest of us all. We just didn't see it until we lost you." She stood, adjusted her purse, and paused at the door. "I'm proud of you, Hazel, truly." Then she left. I didn't cry, I didn't crumble. I didn't fall into her arms or offer a tearful, cinematic hug. Instead, I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and finished editing a logo for a client in Montana. Because that was my life now, purposeful, grounded, and unshakably mine. It started with a certified letter. I found it one crisp October morning, wedged between a client contract and a flyer for a local harvest festival. The return address read, "Law Offices of Stewart and Callahan, Chicago IL." My stomach sank before I even opened it. It was official, cold, legal. Inside the letter was brief but jarring. "Dear Ms. Reynolds, we represent the estate of Richard and Barbara Reynolds. Reynolds Insurance Group has been sold. As per your parents' instructions, the proceeds are to be divided equally among their 3 children." I read it again, and again, equal, among Brett, Craig, and me. The woman they abandoned in another state and never truly apologized to. The letter was accompanied by a breakdown of the numbers, a figure that would have once meant everything to me. Enough to pay off my remaining student loans, expand my office, or take a sabbatical. Now it just felt strange, like compensation for a wound they never stitched closed. Sam came home to find me still sitting at the counter, the letter in one hand and a sealed envelope in the other. "What's that?" he asked gently. "A personal letter from my mother," I said without looking up, enclosed with the inheritance notice. "Do you want to read it? I'm not sure." But I did. The letter was handwritten in my mother's cursive precise and oddly warm. "Dear Hazel, by the time you read this, the business will be sold. Your father has finally retired, somewhat reluctantly, and we're relocating to Arizona. The cold's become too hard on his joints. Before we go, we're hosting a small family gathering at the house. Brett and Craig will be there with their families. I know you've kept your distance, and I understand why. But things have changed. Your father may not say it aloud, but the decision to include you equally in the proceeds, that was his. He recognizes the gravity of what happened, even if he doesn't have the words. We would like you to come. No pressure, no expectations. Just, a chance to close the chapter before a new one begins. With love, Mom. Sam watched me fold the letter with care and slide it back into its envelope. Well, he asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to see them see what 16 years has done. Another part says, let sleeping ghosts lie. He didn't push, just wrapped his arm around me and let the silence settle. Over the next few days, I kept imagining the questions Lily and Emma, our twin daughters, might ask one day. Why don't we know your family, Mom? Didn't they love you? And the most haunting. What did they do that was so bad? What would I tell them? That families sometimes hurt you more than strangers ever could. That love is not always safe. That sometimes you have to walk away, even if it means walking alone. I decided to go, but on my terms. I booked a flight into Chicago the morning of the gathering and a flight out the next day. I reserved a hotel nearby, not the family home, and told Sam and the girls I was going alone. I'm not going there as their daughter, I explained. I'm going as me, the woman I built without them. The house looked almost the same. Pristine hedges, white columns, the same brick path I used to tread barefoot as a kid dodging acorns and cicadas. My mother answered the door, visibly restraining her emotion. Hazel, she said, almost breathless. You came. I did, I replied, offering a nod instead of a hug. The gathering was small. Just my parents, Brett and Craig, their spouses and kids. The backyard looked staged like a photo shoot for reconciliation. String lights, hors d'oeuvres, soft music. I sat with a glass of sparkling water, observing. Brett's kids ran around the garden laughing. Craig's wife smiled politely. No one mentioned the abandonment. Not directly, but the space between us buzzed with it. My father sat stiffly on the patio, hands folded in his lap. When he finally spoke, it wasn't in front of the group. Hazel, he said, come with me. He led me to his study, the same one where I'd been scolded for crying too loudly at 10 or daring to say I wanted to study art. I owe you an apology, he began. His voice was thinner aged. What we did, what I allowed, it was wrong. I didn't respond. I needed to hear the why. My father was cruel to me, he continued. I thought that was parenting, that making someone strong meant breaking them first. But watching you walk away, and then seeing what you built, made me realize we didn't toughen you. We tried to crush you. For the first time, I saw a man who had lost something he couldn't buy back. It doesn't undo it, I said softly, but thank you for saying it. He nodded. You did better than any of us expected. That was part of the problem, I replied. I flew back to Wyoming the next morning. Sam picked me up at the airport, our daughters in the back seat, holding hand-drawn signs that read, Welcome home, Mama. I didn't cry until later that night, sitting on our porch beneath a sky full of stars. Did you get what you needed? Sam asked, his hand in mine. Not forgiveness, I said, but clarity. I saw them as they are, not through the lens of pain, just people, damaged, flawed, but no longer capable of breaking me. He kissed my temple. That's enough. I nodded. It was.